Treasurer, thank you for joining us.
Great to be with you, Leigh.
I'd like to start with the submarine project. Did the Prime Minister attempt to give the impression of a possible deal for an Australian submarine builder in order to cement a couple of South Australian votes for his leadership?
Well, no. You're asking me to make a comment. I can't make a comment on that other than to say that we're going through a proper process to get the submarines that Australia needs. So we've got to have the best subs. We need to have the best submarines to be able to defend our nation.
So it's a $20 to $40 billion project, so as Treasurer you would be familiar with the process.
Yes.
On the 2nd of December last year, you said that it was not realistic to build new submarines in Australia and that, quote, we don't have time to go through a speculation process. What's changed?
Well, a speculation process, that's exactly right. Everyone was speculating about what was going to happen. The fact is that 6 years ago, the decision should have been made about Australian submarines. Now, the Collins-class submarines are being withdrawn from the middle of next decade. Australia is quite vulnerable without submarines. We need them as a deterrence, particularly given we have an enormous economic risk associated with our gas pipelines all around the coastline.
So given that importance, what is the process, and is it not at odds when you've said a couple of months ago we don't have time to go through a speculation process and people putting forward their ideas for stuff they've never built before, and now it appears that the Prime Minister said we are having an open process around that?
No, the Prime Minister said we're going to have a competitive process. The Australian Submarine Corporation can participate in that process. But it's hugely important, Leigh, that we get on with the job of building submarines to protect our coastline.
So
they're an important deterrence.
So what exactly is a competitive evaluation process and how does it differ from an open competitive tender?
Well, open tenders are very different. I mean, we're not purchasing company chairs or tables. We are purchasing the most sophisticated piece of military equipment. And it's not a production line, if you like. When you go to tender in something that is so strategic, you've got to be careful about the information you disclose because it might, in fact, reveal to people who lose out in the tender certain secrets about your strategic operations.
So what's a competitive evaluation process?
Well, everyone will have the right to participate in a competitive process. That's what the Prime Minister said. We're currently going through National Security Committee and through budget committees, we are going through the proper process of evaluating who has the capacity to build the submarines in what is an extraordinarily short period of time because the previous government didn't have the courage to make the decisions.
But we already know from what you said in December that you don't believe that the Australian firms do have the capacity or capability.
Well, they've got the opportunity now to participate, there's no doubt about that. But it is hugely important that we get on with the job of building the submarines. We cannot have second-class submarines. By the middle of this century, 50% of the world's submarines will be in our region, and we cannot have an inferior quality submarine.
Have they now got that opportunity purely because the Prime Minister wanted to shore up some votes for his leadership in South Australia?
No, it was always going to be the case, and we are continuing with that process.
Let's turn to the broader budget strategy. Are you now at odds with the Prime Minister over whether or not to proceed with your 2014 budget strategy or whether to dump it?
No, not at all. We are at a tipping point for the nation, Leigh. We cannot continue to go on borrowing $100 million a day as a government just to pay our daily bills. Because if we continue down that path, we are going to leave future Australians with a lesser quality of life. And I'm not going to pass the buck to future generations to pay for my quality of life today.
And you've been making that argument repeatedly, and you've said, in fact, even on Sunday, if we don't go ahead with our higher education reforms and fixing up Medicare, if we don't go ahead with welfare changes, then that $100 million a day is going to get even higher. But the Prime Minister said that the government's been too bold and ambitious and that it won't be putting up legislation that involves unwinnable fights with the Senate. So it gives the impression that you're saying, well, we must push on with what we're doing, and the Prime Minister's saying we must change course.
Well, we are endeavouring to encourage the Labor Party and the Labor-controlled Senate to come to the table to negotiate.
So just to be clear, are we persisting with those policies or changing course?
And we are, because we have no choice, Leigh. We have no choice. Economic growth is not going to deliver a surplus when Australia's government starts to live within its means.
So the government is still going to pursue a Medicare co-payment in some form. It is still going to pursue higher education changes.
Well, let's go through them individually. In Medicare, I think it is unfair. I think it is unfair that when I go to visit a doctor, I shouldn't have to make a contribution. Now, you, myself, the Prime Minister, Bill Shorten, we have the capacity to contribute something when we go to visit a doctor. If we do that, we can make Medicare more sustainable in the future, so that in 5 years or 10 years' time, when there is an essential drug that will save a person's life, the nation can afford it.
So can we be taking from that then that you'll be targeting high income earners only for the Medicare co-payment?
Well, we have already announced in relation to the co-payment that anyone who is a pensioner, anyone with a healthcare card, children, they do not pay $1. So those people who are not in that grouping of people would make a contribution. Now, I don't think that's unfair. I think it's actually fair that we all make a contribution as higher income people to our own healthcare.
So just to be completely clear, you're saying everything you took to the 2014 budget, you're still going to be pursuing as best you can?
Well, we've always done as best we can. Unfortunately, the Labor-controlled Senate is just ignoring the challenges that Australia faces.
You've said that we have to rein in spending. The Prime Minister said recently that he wants to make childcare more affordable. Isn't one of the few ways you can make childcare more affordable to spend more money on it? Isn't there a contradiction between what you're saying and that goal?
Well, the Independent Productivity Commission undertook a review of childcare just last year. We have that report. We've been consulting widely. The new Social Services Minister, Scott Morrison, is working on that response. It is hugely important that we get childcare right.
But you have to spend money on it.
Well, we do. We're spending a lot of money on it, but we've got to get it right.
But you're not in a position to be spending money on it.
Well, we have no choice, because if we do not get more people into work and give them flexible and affordable childcare, you're going to see more and more women drop out of the workforce, and that's going to have quite a significant negative impact on the Australian economy.
Is this not, though, a confusing shift for the public? Because we've been hearing for a long time we have to not only not have new spending but rein in spending, but now we're hearing, well, we're going to have to do some spending on childcare.
Yeah, well, there's things that we have to spend money on.
But is that not confusing?
Well, I think Australians understand that. There are some things that we have to spend money on where we have no choice and where it actually strengthens our nation. We have spent a lot of money, for example, on national security. Australians expect that. We have to find that money. We spent a lot of money on defence in order to deal with the threat in the Middle East and what it means for Australia. That costs money. So government is not inert. You do get these challenges come along. You have to find the money to pay for them. And what the Prime Minister is saying emphatically, what I'm saying emphatically, is whenever we have new spending, we have to find savings in order to pay for it.
Do you agree with the Prime Minister that the government has been too bold and ambitious and that you bit off more than you could chew?
Well, it has been a challenging time, but we inherited a mess.
But let's just stick with what you decided to do and with what you were pursuing.
Yeah.
Do you agree with the Prime Minister that you were too bold and ambitious?
Well, I think maybe he's right. Yes, I do. I think we were, but we at the time had no choice.
And what were the decisions that were an overreach then?
Well, there's an argument that we shouldn't have put everything into the budget immediately, that we should have staggered it during the course of the year.
And do you think that argument's right?
I'm saying it. So I am saying
well, you said right. There's an argument. You didn't say I think.
Yeah, well, look, we have no choice, Leigh. I mean, we cannot continue to ignore the future. It's a hard time to govern, whether it be in Australia or anywhere in the world. But we do not want to go down the path of other countries. And this is a tipping point for Australia. If we think that we're just going to get economic growth and everything's going to be as it was in the early part of this century, it's not. The world has changed.
The Prime Minister admitted on this program last night that big changes are required. What do you think those big changes are? Well,
we have to make our health system sustainable, because...
No, he meant big changes in the way that you are running government.
Well, I think we've got to be more consultative. There's no doubt about that. And we hear the concerns. I think we've got to explain our decisions more to the Australian people.
Do you not feel that you've been trying to explain them, though?
Well, maybe in that regard we haven't done enough. We all have to accept collective responsibility. But
what do you think you've done wrong, though? Because you have to understand what you've done wrong in order to change it.
Well, the intergenerational report, which I'll be releasing later this month, is going to be the beginning of a major conversation with the Australian people about how we address the challenges of the future.
So that's a test, is it, for your...
No, it's not. you could call it a test. I'm getting on with the job, as the Prime Minister is, of governing the nation.
The Prime Minister told the party room today, if we focus on the ALP, we can win the next election. If not, we will lose. Is that not an opposition mindset? Because if you were successfully implementing your own policy agenda, then the Labor Party would be irrelevant.
Well, there is a sense of frustration that there is no accountability with the Labor Party.
But they're in opposition.
Well, no, they control the Senate. They control the Senate. And they're not only opposing everything we're doing to fix the mess, they're opposing all the things that they previously promised.
They don't actually control the Senate. There's other people in the Senate as well.
Well, they actually do. They have the biggest block of votes in the Senate, and they do control the Senate with the Greens and the Independents.
Does it indicate, though, that mindset about this focus on Labor, that Tony Abbott has failed to make an effective transition from opposition leader to Prime Minister?
No. If you look at what we've achieved over the last 16 months, it is extraordinary for the nation.
But every time you say that, aren't you saying to the public, you guys are getting it wrong because we've been awesome?
No, the public always get it right. I mean, they always get it right.
They think you haven't done a great
They're
job.
the ultimate customers. I grew up in a small business, and my dad always said the customer is always right, and he was right.
But they're not happy with the job you've been doing.
Well, we've got to do more. You know, Leigh, when it gets hard, you have to work harder. And that's the lessons I've learnt in life, and that's the lesson that we need to take forward.
What's the case for Tony Abbott keeping you in Treasury rather than replacing you with somebody else, given that the budget has arguably been the biggest political problem for the government?
Well, I'm not a quitter. I'm not a quitter. I have never been a quitter. And I'm not going to quit when it comes to the best interests of the nation.
But whether or not you're not a quitter is irrelevant to whether you're the best person to do the job.
I am the best person to do the job, and I'm calling it as I see it. There is no easy solution. There is no silver bullet. There is no easy path here. Either we reduce our spending in order to live within our means, or you have to increase taxes, which at the end of the day cost people their jobs.
Do you concede that if things continue in the same direction, that you will not be Treasurer within a short period of time?
No, because it's not about me, it's about the Australian people.
But your party room this week has indicated a great deal of dissatisfaction. As I mentioned, the economy and the budget has been the key political problem for the government. Does that not put you on shaky ground along with the Prime Minister?
Well, you know, Leigh, only commentators would suggest that 61-39 is a loss.
I'm not saying it's a loss, but 39 is a substantial number.
It's not about us. It is about the Australian people. I care passionately about my country. And we are doing what is hard. Not popular sometimes, but we are doing what is right as well.
You have a party room with 39 people hostile to the Prime Minister, universally bad poll numbers putting you in an election-losing position, and a couple of popular leadership candidates in the wings. Taken together, do all of those things indicate that it's a matter of when rather than if the party room moves against the Prime Minister and by association you?
Well, the irony is, Leigh, that no one is saying that we are not taking the right approach to dealing with the mess that we have before us. What they're saying and talking about the issues about selling things and so on, we have to continue to live within our means, to aim to live within our means.
I think the backbench has been saying you've been going about it the wrong way. The suggestion is that you guys have been having a conversation that the nation's not having.
Well, I think we've got to embrace the nation, and over the next few weeks you'll see us reach directly to the nation and invite the nation to participate in the conversation that helps to rebuild an understanding of the challenges that Australia faces.
Treasurer, thank you very much for your time
Thanks
today.
very much, Leigh.